The FIFA World Cup scam explained by The Invisible Game and The Invisible Hand. Subscribe, like, share, enjoy it.
April 13th, 2018. The North America Committee has just submitted its proposal for the 2026 World Cup, billed as the People's World Cup. Central to this claim was a promise. Group stage ticket prices as low as $21 to max.
Basic economics. You can't promise a price 8 years into the future. When you read something, think. When you watch something, think. When you hear something, think.
Maximize access to the beautiful game. However, 8 years on from this promise, and the reality is very different. This is a ticket to the 2022 World Cup final between France and Argentina. It was arguably one of the greatest football matches of all time, and if you wanted to be in the stadium to watch it live, it would have cost you around $1,000. That same ticket for the final this year will now set you back on average $6,000. More than 500% more. And this isn't just an issue for the final. In 2026, the lowest price that fans can reasonably get access to tickets for is $150, more than 7 times the original promise. But even these are still a pipe dream. If you were to log on to a standard ticket website, let's say SeatPick, say I want to go to this game here, England versus Ghana. I'm English, so it makes sense. Ticket prices start at $450. But that's just the game. Let's say I also want to stay somewhere near. Hotels are now $1,000 for 2 nights, and
Sleeping is overrated.
traveling to the game, that's another
Rest is overrated.
100. So how did this all happen?
Transport is overrated.
Sure, in years gone by, the World Cup has always been expensive, but this year round it feels like, well, a scam. So, who's really to blame here? Is it your favourite non-profit world peace champion, FIFA? Or is it the cities hosting these events? Or even maybe your favourite company, Ticketmaster, using dynamic pricing to get a few extra bucks? And more importantly, who is profiting from all of this? This is the 2026 World Cup scam explained. Okay, so this World Cup is on track to be the most expensive in history. But in fairness, it's also happening across 2 of the most expensive countries in the world. So that kind of makes sense, right? Well, the reason this World Cup in particular is so expensive isn't just one thing. It's really 3 layers of costs that stack on top of each other. The first is of course FIFA. They set the ticket prices, they design the tournament structure, and they wrote the contracts that everything else flows from, and we'll get to them. But the second is actually the host countries themselves. So that could be the local governments, transit companies, and the third is the companies within these cities. But let's take a look at that $21 ticket claim again, as it starts to tell us exactly how this World Cup started going wrong. Back in 2018, the united bid, so US, Canada and Mexico, were up against Morocco, which was a bit of an issue. Morocco had some real political momentum, and it was also an African bid, which was highly successful in South Africa 8 years before, and it was also a bid from a smaller country, making it more emotionally compelling than that of the North American behemoth. The United bid instead needed to differentiate on something more concrete, so they leaned hard on economics, bigger stadiums, more revenue for FIFA, and crucially accessibility with the $21 ticket price. And if you go through the bid document, you can see that this was a fairly central selling point. However, this was more of a bidding strategy, and once it went through, there wasn't really a commitment to enforce it, and pricing fell back into the hands of everyone's favourite peacemaking organisation. Now, it's not exactly a secret that FIFA has turned into a bit of a grift over the last decade, but let's actually give them a chance here. Running a World Cup is expensive. You've got prize money, logistics, security, referees, broadcasting infrastructure. The 2022 cycle alone cost over $6 billion to put on. So yeah, it's not cheap, but it also makes a lot of money. In fact, this World Cup is expected to break multiple revenue records, and FIFA operates differently to most businesses, where they take the revenue and they palm off most of the costs on the hosts themselves. When cities sign up to host, they have to sign a strict host city agreement, which essentially hands the keys to FIFA for the duration of the tournament. And under recent World Cup hosting agreements, FIFA now pockets 100% of the revenue from ticket sales, merchandise, and stadium concessions. So when you're buying a ticket to a World Cup game, you're not buying it from the stadium, you're buying it directly from FIFA. Now, ticket prices have obviously been a pretty big issue in the build-up to this World Cup. But to be fair to FIFA, they did eventually respond to some of this backlash. In December 2025, they introduced a $60 supporter entry ticket, which for context is less than it costs to go see a run-of-the-mill Premier League match. However, there is of course a catch. These tickets are only available to what FIFA calls loyal fans of qualifying nations, selected through their national football associations. So unless your FA has decided that you qualify, that $60 ticket doesn't exist for you. Instead, the cheapest general release tickets you could realistically get your hands on are around $140 to $200 depending on the match. But those are just the official prices, because before any tickets even go on sale to the public, FIFA allocates towards hospitality and premium packages, and this year they're doing it more than ever. These packages sell from anywhere between $2,500 to $73,000 per person, in a separate funnel which bypasses the public entirely. And this year, FIFA is expected to make a record $700 million from this alone. Whatever tickets are left after this go into a ballot, and if you don't succeed there, then you're onto the resale market, which is where the fun really begins. See, in years gone by, tickets had a set price based on the category that they were in. Like, if you're in category 1, you'd be nearer the pitch, but you'd also expect to pay more than someone who is in row Z. However, this year, FIFA are using something called dynamic pricing, which essentially means that the price of a ticket changes in real time based on how many people want it. So if more people want to go to a particular match, that price just keeps rising and rising. And in the US and Canada, there is no ceiling to this price. So a ticket that might have started at $200 could be $500 by the time you actually try to buy it. And what's also convenient is that if someone decides to sell their ticket because they don't want it anymore, FIFA can list it on their own resale platform, which also has no price limit. They can charge whatever they want, and then they take a 15% cut from the buyer and a 15% cut from the seller. So if prices go up, FIFA profits, and if prices go up again on resale, FIFA profits again. Right now, the average resale price for a group stage game is around $550. The cheapest ticket that you'll find is about $165 for a low demand game like Ivory Coast versus Curacao. But high demand group stage matches, like Portugal versus Colombia in Miami, are going for over $3,000. And
can they make prices cheaper? We can all have an answer to that.
If you can't afford any of that and you just want to go to a host city, soak in the atmosphere and watch the game on a big screen with other fans, for the first time ever, FIFA is also charging people to enter the fan parks too. Okay, but ticket prices are just one element. If you're a fan travelling to the World Cup, you need somewhere to stay, a way to get to the game, and
overrated.
Maybe you want a scarf or a shirt. All of that also costs money, but has nothing to do with FIFA. Across the US, Mexico, and Canada, 16 cities are hosting matches this summer. And it's those cities that
buy a used shirt online. Cheap.
Themselves, who are responsible for basically everything around the game that isn't the game itself. Like how much it costs to get to the
underrated
stadium, or how much tax you're paying on your hotel room, or even whether there's enough police and security on match day. And how much this costs depends entirely on which city you're in. Imagine that you're a France fan, and you want to follow your team across the group stage. If you're going to France versus Iraq in Philadelphia, then you've got to get to the Lincoln Financial Field, and you would take SEPTA, the normal city train. And that would take you back roughly $2.90, which is just the normal regular fare. However, now imagine that you're the same France fan and you're also going to the match versus Senegal. This one's in New Jersey, which means you've got to get to the MetLife Stadium. You take the New Jersey Transit from Penn Station, but this time the round train trip would now cost you $100.
Walking is underrated.
More than 5 times the standard rate. Effectively, the same public transport ride can cost nearly 30 times more depending on which city you're going to a game in. Now, there's been a lot of finger pointing about who's actually to blame for this. New Jersey's governor has been publicly fighting with FIFA over who should be paying for fan transport. And FIFA is saying that the original host city agreements required free transport, and they've been going back and forth for weeks. But regardless of who's blaming who, clearly the cities have some degree of influence over how much things cost. In theory, cities have a lot to gain from hosting a tournament like this. It brings in hundreds of thousands of visitors who spend money in your hotels, restaurants, and bars in return for just bolstering your local infrastructure. Like Miami was told to expect $920 million in economic impact off a $53 million public investment. However, in reality, most of the upside from these tournaments flows not to the cities themselves, but directly into private businesses. And nowhere is it more obvious than in hotel prices. This is a map of every city hosting this year's World Cup. And next to each city is how much a hotel costs there on a normal night. Let's say a random Tuesday in late May. These are just the normal standard prices.
Let me guess, 200% increase.
It's like $200 here in Houston. Now here's that same map, but on match day. Across the board, prices are nearly twice as much for the exact
Alright, I was wrong, 100%.
same hotel. And remember, these aren't luxury hotels either. Like this one here in Boston is just your run-of-the-mill Hampton Inn, the kind of place with a waffle iron in the lobby. But this is still just the average. The Athletic actually looked into this, and they found that the worst country for this price gouging wasn't actually the US, but Mexico. On the Marriott app, only 3 hotels out of the 46 were not sold out. And in this hotel here, Le Meridien in Reforma, there was a 2,000% price increase for a 2-night stay compared to just 3 months earlier. Across 6 hotels in Mexico City, the average price of a per-night rate went from $172 3 weeks earlier to $1,500 around the opening Mexico game. And 3 of the top 4 most substantial percentage increases are in the Mexican host cities of Mexico City, Monterrey, and Guadalajara. But it's not exactly like the United States is giving a great deal for fans either. The Fairfield Inn in East Rutherford, which is just 1.5 miles from the MetLife Stadium, saw the price of a 2-night stay go up to over $3,000, up from $580 just 3 weeks earlier. Now, this isn't exactly new to a World Cup. Hotel companies in pretty much every major tournament before this tend to jack up prices to account for rising demand.
I don't want to blame local businesses. I don't know what I would do if I was running like a restaurant or a hotel. Of course I'll raise prices. Don't know how much, but I'd do it.
And in this World Cup, there have been some cases where hotels have pushed prices so far that fans have simply stopped booking. But these are still kind of edge cases. And after all, people still need somewhere to stay. Okay, so we've talked about FIFA, the cities, and the hotels. But here's what happened when all 3 of those things hit the same person's bank account at the same time. So here's how much it costs an England fan to follow
That
the 3 lines across the group stage. First of all, you've got to get a flight there. Let's be generous and call it around $1,500. It's probably a little more, but let's say that you were smart and you booked it in advance. That gets you to Arlington, Texas, where England are playing their first game against Croatia. From there, you fly to Boston and then to New Jersey. And given rail isn't really an option in the US, that means another $1,300 on flights. Then you've got to get tickets. Now, we could try those $60 supporter tickets we mentioned, but I've never been to a game before, so that's out of the question. Realistically, we're ending up in Category 3, which is around $120 to $200 per match. Call it $170. And 3 games at that is another $500, again being generous. Then we've got to stay somewhere. Realistically, we're going to want a hotel, and after a bit of shopping around, we found a mid-tier hotel in each of the cities for around $400 a night. Let's say we're staying 5 nights in total, so around $2,000. Then we've got to get around the cities themselves, and even if we're not Ubering everywhere, public transit is still going to be expensive. Call it another $200 across 3 cities. Then food and drink, another $300. Add all of that up and you get to roughly $6,000, and that's probably being generous. Now, it's unlikely that every fan is going to go to every game, but you can already see here that even going to just one game is probably going to set you back at least $2,000. And there's stories of people selling their houses here in the UK just to go to games. If we compare that to previous World Cups, it paints a stark difference. The average estimates for doing the same...
Don't believe everything you watch, or you see, or you hear, or read, or somebody tells you. Don't believe this. figure out how trends work, you're gonna find out what I'm talking about.
Thing at Brazil, Russia, or Qatar, even after adjusting for inflation, is still significantly cheaper. And this pattern is probably only going to repeat itself, as the next World Cup is also across 3 different countries.
Why? What happened to one country hosting it? Can't afford it? It's not true. No country can afford something like this. Everyone is in debt, but still don't understand.
So who is actually winning from all this? And if you follow the money, where does it all go? The main culprit is of course FIFA. They're going to generate $8.9 billion from this World Cup alone, as part of a $13 billion 4-year commercial cycle, which is 72% more than the last World Cup in Qatar. And a lot of this is coming from hospitality and ticketing. They're going to make $2.5 billion more than last time on this revenue stream alone. And matchday revenue has gone from roughly $950 million in Qatar to a projected $3 billion in 2026. However, some of that money is also going back into football. A record $727 million is being distributed to the 48 participating teams, with the champion earning $50 million, and even group stage exits with a guaranteed $9 million. One party who isn't winning are the host cities. In fact, pretty much every single one of them is going to lose money, while companies like hotels, airlines, and ticketing platforms are going to capture most of the visible windfall. And taking on all of this burden and cost are, at the bottom, fans.
Staying at home is underrated.